Good morning. Well, maybe good morning. It's a little late this morning. Hi, I'm Anna Walker with Anna Walker Designs and StabThingsIntoExistence.com, and I apologize for being late this morning. Nothing like waiting on hold for 20 minutes with the home warranty service. That's all I gotta say. But I am here and I am prepped and we're ready to go with finishing up the narwhal that we started to skin yesterday, and he is fully skinned. Maybe it's a she, don't know. But we're going to work on the details today. So I've got everything ready. I'm going to move the camera down and we'll get started. All right, so here we go. Narwhal ready, and also ready are some pieces of white pre-felt that I will use for the eyes. A strand of black that I will use to outline the eyes and to put the pupils of the eyes in. I took a little bit of that green. Now, I had pulled just this neon green because the green in the picture, and I'm going to pull the picture up here real quick, the green in the picture looked really neon to me, but the more I got to looking at it, the more I realized that, well, yeah, it was neon, but it was also a little bit more than neon. So let me pull up that picture and see if you agree with me. What I did was I mixed some just green in with it. And here's the picture, and I'm not sure that you can see that tusk. See how it's kind of neon, but it's also kind of green. So that's what I did. I just took a little bit of green and finger blended it with the neon, and I got this color that I think is going to work really well. Now on the photo, and this is a picture of a child's drawing of a narwhal, it just has a piece straight up and down little stripe of green in the center of it. What I thought would be better is to take the green and to spiral it around our horn here and add it on like a spiral to give it more of that horn shape. So that's what we're gonna do with that green. And I'm just gonna leave it right there because it'll just stay in place until I felt it right in place. I also have some pink. There's a little bit of red as well, because if you look, the narwhal in the picture has red spots on its tongue. Pink tongue, red spots. So I took a little bit of pink roving and I just lightly needled it on both sides, laid it flat to make more of a piece of fabric that I can then wrap the tongue around with and make that happen. But before we get to the tongue, I'm going to go ahead and do the tusk because we've got the tusk ready to go right here because it's already attached. Now, I'm going to start at the top just simply because that's the closest thing to me. And I am just going to be holding this with my hands. And I'm going to come in at an angle in a couple of spots just to anchor that green in there. And I'm just being very shallow. I'm not worrying about my fingers because I'm not going so deep that I would get my fingers. Of course, I said that yesterday too, and I stabbed myself. So let's see if I can do this today without stabbing myself. It's tricky when you have a three-dimensional piece that you're working on and you need to get at odd angles to be able to do the work. But we can maneuver things so that we can get in here and be able to stab in a little more aggressively to get that spiral on our little narwhal tusk. Now, did you know that narwhals are also called sea unicorns? And that back in the day when we weren't so careful about the creatures that were available and in the world, they were hunted for their tusks, and their tusks were presented as unicorn horns in markets. So I'm glad that we're not doing that anymore, and that we love the narwhal just for being a funky narwhal, because they are really odd looking creatures, aren't they? All right, now I am going to have to come in with my hand here, slide this out of the way so you guys can see just a little easier. I'm going to have to come in, support this with my hand, otherwise we just might knock that tusk off its center. I mean, it's solidly attached, but we don't want to be too terribly aggressive here. Otherwise we could get it really askew, and we don't want that to happen. And working this at an angle. As soon as I get this tusk done, I'll get another lamp in here so that you guys can see just a little easier. But sometimes you just got to come at it when you're adding details from a different direction. And I think that we are good to go with our narwhal tusk. I could fiddle with this some more and get it to contour so that it looks like indentations where those stripes are, but I'm happy with this for right now. So we've got our tusk done. Now let's work on that tongue. Now the reason that I made a piece of fabric for this is because it's going to be a little easier for us to come in from underneath and attach it right here at the base of the tongue with those loose fibers right in there. I'm just holding the lower jaw back and I'm just tucking these loose ends of the fiber right in the crease. And you see how that's just working right there in the center? And then once I've got it anchored at the base of the tongue, then I can flip it over and I can take a look at what we need to do to bring this in. The upper lip is just a little more shallow, so we've got to be careful when we come in here. And I'm coming in at an angle so that I don't stab through this white part, this undyed fiber here. Now the tongue is long enough that it comes out over the jaw, so I can come down here and I can stab just beautifully right in, and then I can bring this other side up and wrap it around. I said I was going to get another lamp in here, didn't I? Let's get this anchored. All right, it's anchored. Let's get that other lamp over here. Because I think that having this here is going to make, yeah, that makes a big difference. Okay, so coming in here on the side, adding it just into the white because I don't want to go through and get it into the blue underneath on the lower jaw. But I do want to make sure that it's anchored into the undyed fiber here. This comes out along at the end of the tongue here. But where these connect, I want to make sure I come in sideways so that I connect those pieces so that we don't have a seam there. And again, like yesterday, we are stabbing pretty shallowly because we've already got the felting happening in the sculpture with the undyed fibers. We are just adding the colored fibers, the dyed fibers, to what has already been felted, so we don't need to stab aggressively and we don't need to stab deeply. We do, however, need to come at it from both sides. So let's lift that lower jaw up again. And let's get the underside of the tongue attached nicely. Again, shallow stabs. Come in from the side to get those fibers to connect along the side of the tongue. I'm just going through the tongue itself. I am not hitting much of the foam base at all, and then I can come in and go along the length and go parallel along to get those fibers to connect in another area as well. Now, I've got a lot of excess fiber up here at the end, and that excess fiber I can take, lift this upper lip up. We want to get that pink really well connected right underneath that upper jaw, that upper lip. Get it to come in here on the sides. Okay, and we've got the tongue connected. Now I want to come in, whoops. It's the only bad thing. 1, 2, 3, there we go. The only negative thing about my outlight that I just added to the table is that it is very sensitive, and it's got a very sensitive touch switch. So if I hit it just even barely grazing it with my hand or my elbow, then it can turn that lamp off. All right, and now I'm going to do a little bit more along the length here, just to get those fibers to connect. And then I'm going to feel where the end of my tongue is, okay? So there's the end of my tongue. And what I'm going to do is just barely above the edge, I am just going to round this out, trim off the excess, and I'm going to come in and make this the new ending for the tongue. That'll give me a nice straight edge, so it will look like that tongue just comes to a tip and comes to a nice flat edge. And I'll just work that a little bit here, and then I'm going to turn it over and work it a little bit on the other side. I have a little corner here that's not wanting to tuck in, so I'm just going to trim that off. There we go. Now it's nice and rounded. Anytime you cut fibers off, you want to make sure that you needle felt right over those fibers really, really well. Because if you don't, they could have a tendency to fray and come loose. All right, so you can see there that we've got a lot of fibers that just sort of jumped up because I was stabbing straight through. Now what I want to do is take these fibers and just by using my needle in a parallel manner to the tongue, I'm just sort of encouraging those fibers to tuck right in to the tongue. And that way it'll take care of those fluffed fibers, but it won't push those fibers out to the other side of the tongue. And it's just, you're not using hardly any pressure at all. You're just laying the needle right on top of the surface, and you're just jiggling it back and forth horizontally, and you can see that that gave us a nice flat area. And now to encourage that flatness, boy, that narwhal's just slippery, isn't he? Just rub the top of it and the bottom of it a little bit with my hand, just to encourage those fibers to stay in. And we can even, along the edge here, if we wanted to, we could come in right along the edge, holding it very carefully, and tuck that edge right in. I know you guys can't see that very well. But we can come in just parallel and pull those fibers in. And it helps to hold it while you're pushing those fibers where they need to be. This also gives me an opportunity to see where I might need a little touch more, or if I can just work the needle like I did right there to get those fibers covering up the white underneath. Okay, so we have our tongue. And if you want, you can trim off any flyaways. And these are things that you don't need to worry about using the needle over. It's just trimming away the flyaways that are there. And so we have our tongue, and our tongue is ready to go. Now we need 3 red dots on the tongue. And so I've got the red fiber. Where is the red fiber? Where did you go, red fiber? There's my eyes. Tiny little bit of pink there. All right, well, I got red fiber right here. I guess I'll use this. I knew I had another piece of red. Fibers fly away. They do fly away. All right, so I'm just taking 3 little wisps of wool. Really, hardly anything at all, okay? And I'm just going to take and just sort of scrunch it all up into a roundish shape. And I'm going to put it down the center. Let's get the other 2 little wisps here. See, wisps fly all over the place. You come to my studio and you will see wisps flying everywhere. Okay, so I'm just shallowly stabbing the red dot right in here, and to make sure that it's more circular shape, if I come at it at about a 45-degree angle, then it can bring those sides in so that it will stay pretty rounded. But it doesn't take much to get that dot to stay in place. And so now we're ready for our next wisp. And again, just scrunching it up in my fingers into a rounded ballish shape. And the more you stab in the very center, the closer those fibers are going to come in. You just keep working that needle to get those fibers to come in. And if you need to, you come at it at about a 45-degree angle. I'm going to make this one just a little smaller. And now our third little wisp for our third little red dot on the tongue. And this one's going to be right here at the end. Not quite at the end, but we're going to get it close. But we've got our 3 little red dots from the drawing. And remember, just shallow stabs. We don't need to go all the way through. And there are 3 dots on the tongue. So we've got our tusk done, we've got our tongue done. Now let's make his face, because he's got some really cool, or she has got some really cool eyes. And I want to pull the picture up so that you can see it again, because the eyes are not even. And I want you to see that they're not even. And I hate that my phone does this, but we'll get to it. Okay, so here is our picture. And I want you to look at that face. Isn't that a face that only a mother could love? So we've got one smaller oval shaped eye and we've got one rounded eye. Both of them are outlined. The small oval has a little bit extra eyeliner on it and has a little bit of an eyelash curl at one side. And so we're going to put together the eyes here. The whites of the eyes I'm going to create on the foam base itself, because it will work out a little easier for us to get that shape that we want. Now I've taken just 3 layers of a white pre-felt, and I am just going to stab this nice and flat, and I'm only going to stab it on this one side. And that's because I don't want to pick up any additional colors if I can absolutely help it at all. So I'm just going to work it on this one side. Pick it up, move it over, work it again. And I'm just making a flat piece. Excuse me. 3 cups of coffee is not enough apparently this morning. All right, so there is our flat piece of roving for our round eye. Now I'm going to make just the same. I've got 3 layers of pre-felt here, and I'm just going to work it flat to make the smaller oval eye. And again, I'm just working it on one side. Lift it up, and then work it again on that same side. Now, if you're working with white or an undyed pre-felt or white fiber, and you're working on a surface that you've worked a lot of different colors on, find a corner where you don't have any bits of fiber stuck to it, and that'll help you keep that white nice and white. All right, so on both of these, the back side, surprisingly enough, is a little brighter than what the front side was. So I am going to take and cut my circle first because that's the larger eye. And I'm just sort of using my thumb and my thumbnail as a guide for cutting that circle. And so there's our nice big eye. And it may be too big, but we can take that and we can work it from angles to make it a little smaller. And so now I'm going to cut our smaller oval. And just like cutting anything else, if you keep your scissors straight and you move your item, you will be able to get a more cohesive and a smoother cut. So we have our larger eye and we have our smaller eye. Let's get those babies put on. Now, these are a lot larger than what we need them to be, but we want to start with a little larger because as we put these on, and I'm just first anchoring it here in the center, okay? Then we can come at it from a 45-degree angle, and I want to have a little bit of a pop to these eyes, so I want them to come away from the backing of the body of the narwhal just a little bit. So I'm coming at it from a 45-degree angle, which can be tricky when you've got a sculpture and you have to hold things a little bit differently sometimes. But as you're working it, when you come in at that 45-degree angle, not only does it make that circle a little smaller, but it also causes the eye to sort of bulge out a little bit and be more pronounced. And that is what I'm looking for. I'm going to bring it back over here again. Work on this side and on the bottom. Keep that round shape. And then I'm going to just work it on a curve, coming at it sort of spoke-like, so that I can get that rounded bit nicely felted in. And there is our large circle eye. Now we're going to put on our smaller oval. Now again, this is going to be larger than what it will be when we finish out. I'm focusing here in the center of it first, and then I'm coming in at an angle, about a 45-degree angle, and that will cause it to come in toward the center a little bit more. It will shrink down the size just a bit, and it will allow those eyes to sort of bulge out and pop out a little bit for us, and that's what we're looking for. We want dimension. When you're doing a sculpture, it's all about taking something that was especially with this, a two-dimensional drawing, and we're turning it into a three-dimensional object. And so it's important to think about things like, what's going to stick out? How do I make this look like something other than just a flat piece? And now we'll work the spoke angles just to firmly felt it in. Go around the outside edge. And we have our eyes. And they're just as funky as they were in the drawing. So now let's finish those up. We have got a little piece of black. I'm going to take a piece for each eye. I'm going to go around the white eye, the large eye first. And it's just poking in different spots to get that black right along the edge. And I'm just going straight down, and then I will come in at an angle again. Trying to make sure you guys can see this. And when we come at it from that 45-degree angle, it just sort of tucks that right along the edge to outline that eye. See, we've got the outline ready to go. Now we need just a touch and squinch it up and just ball it up for that pupil in the center. And when you're doing the pupil, you don't want to poke too much because you don't want to make it sink in. So you just want to barely attach it, and then look at the white of your eye and just sort of angle it down if you need to make it look cohesive. But there's our one eye. Now I need to refer to my picture here real quick because I know that other eye is a little wonky. And I want to capture that wonkiness. Okay, so the second eye, you see the pupil is down at the bottom, and then it's got a heavier outline around it and a little bit of a curve of an eyelash curl, okay? So we're going to take another little bit of the black. This one's a little bit more pronounced because, like I said, we've got a little bit more of an eyeliner kind of look to this particular eye, and I want to make sure that we get that realized with our interpretation of this drawing. So we're going to go around and make sure that we've got that nice and dark there, and then I'm going to pull this edge up, and I'm going to go ahead and give us our little eyelash curl right here. I'm going to pull that edge in, not too much. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. All right, and now we're going to get this down here around our eye. Nice little eyelash curl there. I think we're a little heavier on this side, the eyeliner. Bring this in just a bit. And a tiny little bit of black for our pupil. Scrunch it up a little bit, and it is right on the bottom edge. And there we have our two eyes, and we have our narwhal finished up, looking, I think, very much like the narwhal on the picture. But let's pull that up and see how we did. And there's our narwhal. Now we could add the little bits that are on the fin back here. We could add those little stripes, and I may do that, but I think for an interpretation of our narwhal, I think we've done rather well in interpreting this in a three-dimensional aspect. And this is just one of the many things that you can do with needle felting. You can create an actual three-dimensional interpretation of your child's drawings, and what a wonderful keepsake to perhaps send to grandparents, or to keep yourself in that trunk that you saved the things that your kids made when they were little, and you give to them maybe when they're 18 or when they get married or something. So it was an awful lot of fun making the narwhal, and I think we did okay. I think this worked out just fine. It's a little bit different, but then it's three-dimensional instead of two-dimensional. So I like our funky little narwhal, and I hope you had fun watching me create him, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.